Group living. Organisms have evolved over hundreds of millions of years from single-celled to multicellular life forms, gradually becoming more complex with diverse cell types, tissues, and body structures, as viewed from the paleontological perspective. Subsequently, these life forms evolved complex brain structures and cognitive abilities, including language and reasoning skills, that human species possesses today. It is reasonable to expect that humans, being advanced, unique, and intelligent, both on Earth and other observable cosmic spaces, should be able to live in harmony with each other, including individuals, communities, and ethnic groups. What is surprising is that human beings are extremely complex, adaptable, and sometimes paradoxical. Coexistence of good and evil, kindness and cruelty, greed and generosity, peace and war are pervasive. Diverse contradictions continue to persist to this day, revealing that the evolutionary process of humans is yet to reach complete perfection. Is this phenomenon a byproduct of the evolutionary process or an inevitable imperfection? Currently, there is a lack of plausible explanation from science, and equally unexpected, there exists no answer from the Almighty God of the human religious system. Furthermore, why weren't Adam and Eve capable of resisting the devil's temptation in the Garden of Eden? What made the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil so irresistible? As of yet, no saint has been capable of providing answers to these questions. These contradictions appear to be particularly noticeable among herd animals. Is it possible that living in a group is the reason behind it? Scalability in group living. Social animals that herd engage in communal activities such as foraging, resting, and migrating to support and assist one another within their population or colony. The animal sociobiology and behavioral ecology researchers focus on the factors influencing the herding behavior of animals. The natural factor, or external stimulu's attraction to multiple individuals, may cause the herding behavior of animals. The herding behavior of animals may be caused by the mutual attraction between individual animals, or the external environment may restrict the dispersal of individual animals. Habitat suitability is often utilized by scientists to determine the herd characteristics, including predation risk, foraging efficiency, transmission of parasites and diseases, aggressiveness, competition for resources, and offspring survival, etc. Herding appears to be more favorable, with higher habitat suitability. There exist several hypotheses about the origin of group living that have been explained from different perspectives, such as parental investment, resource defense, predation risk, food distribution, and others. Each explanation appears to present reasonable points and does not conflict with others. Nonetheless, whether animals live in groups or not, and whether it is beneficial to live in groups, is not an established fact. The decision of animals to live in groups or not is a result of a combination of environmental and individual factors. The purpose of this book is to determine what factors affect the group's size, not to explore why groups exist or not. Now, let us examine the characteristics of a lion pride. Lions are a species with powerful predatory capabilities, and each can survive on their own. Nevertheless, the lion has inexplicably adopted a group-living phenomenon, making it the sole feline family member that lives in herds. What is the reason behind this? Do the benefits of living in a community surpass the drawbacks of living in isolation? Usually, a pride is dominated by 2 to 4 males, while a few females handle the management and day-to-day operations. It is uncommon for a pride to have more than 15 adult members, and this is known as a superpride. Superprides are more aggressive compared to regular prides and brave enough to hunt for large and hazardous herbivores, such as giraffes and buffaloes. However, is bigger really better? Even though large lion prides are more aggressive and have more reproductive success, they cannot compensate for insufficient food distribution despite their size. Researchers have noted that individual lions are less likely to experience starvation, whereas members of large prides are more likely to suffer from food scarcity. On the surface, it appears that solitary lions, particularly lionesses, face more challenges due to the perilous conditions of the savanna compared to those residing in prides. As a result, solitary lions are under persistent stress that curtails their lifespan, with many surviving for less than a third of the time taken by members leaving prides. A comparison with cheetahs, however, begs the question, despite the lion's reputation as the king of the jungle, is it weaker than a cheetah in terms of individual strength, speed, and survival tactics? Without question, the answer is negative. What is the reason that lions choose to live in groups? What makes lion prides rarely exceed 15 individuals? The size of some other group living species is much larger than that of a pride of lions. A honeybee colony comprises thousands to tens of thousands of bees, including a queen, a small number of males, and numerous workers. A small ant colony typically has only a few dozen or a few thousand individuals, while larger colonies can reach tens of thousands. Anelosamus spiders exceed the usual size limits to form huge groups comprising of more than 20,000 individuals due to their ability to capture larger prey by cooperating. Fair's leaf monkeys, which live in dense tropical and subtropical hardwood forests, usually have group sizes ranging from 10 to 30 individuals. Remarkably, the Fair's leaf monkey discovered in Yunnan Province, China, is composed of an immense group size of 320 individuals. Chimpanzee groups are commonly composed of 2 to 20 individuals, occasionally as significant as 70 to 80 members. These herding animals resemble human societies during the imperial period. Each population developed its own imperial structure, whether big or small, with a constant pattern of conquest and counter-conquest, and both external and internal disruptions. Given this information, it is reasonable to hypothesize that the language proficiency of a species may influence its choice of group living and the size of the group. Without the ability to communicate through language, living in social groups may not be the norm. Animals sometimes come together to cooperate when food is abundant, when they need to hunt, or when they must protect themselves against predators, but they do not regularly establish complex group societies, let alone create hierarchies or divisions of labor within them. The reason for this is that establishing hierarchies and divisions of labor demands more sophisticated and rigorous methods of sharing and transmitting information. This is important to prevent significant disruptions and endless conflicts during group activities. For example, we can consider bees, ants, and chimpanzees. Besides genetically determining the morphological division of labor, bees and ants cultivate a shared language system through the use of pheromones or dances to achieve intricate cooperation. They can differentiate individuals and share responsibilities, set up hierarchies, and communicate complex information within the collective to coordinate daily activities like foraging, caring for larvae and queen, cleaning, building nests, and defending the colony. Chimpanzees, whose brain neurons are as substantially developed as those of humans, exhibit a broad range of emotional expressions and possess more intricate language abilities than bees and ants. Chimpanzees can display facial expressions of happiness, anger, and sorrow, and when they encounter each other, they vocally greet each other, occasionally with compliance, holding hands, embracing, kissing, or touching each other's faces and necks with their hands. When some individuals feel irritable, their companions place a hand on their shoulder to soothe them. During mutual exchange of ideas and information, a variety of sounds, postures, and gestures are relied upon to convey more complex information. When a chimpanzee catches prey, other chimpanzees might try to grab it. If surprised, chimpanzees usually touch or cling on to their companion nearby. If they find a bountiful meal, they show their delight by kissing and hugging their companions fervently to express their excitement. Considering this, does a more complex and functional language system imply a larger group size? This seems unlikely because we have not found any linguistic advantages in animals with larger group sizes. Perhaps other factors are also involved in determining group size. Surviving independently appears to be one of these abilities. A lion's capability to survive on its own is indisputably superior to that of its competitors, so the pride size is not too big. If the pride gets too large, some robust lions may attempt to break free from the Lion King's influence to evade passive food dispersal and boost their mating likelihood. From a species standpoint, independence becomes advantageous. This is true for a lion's pride, a monkey's troop, or a chimpanzee's group. Humans are a prime example of this. Their population is so vast that, when it comes to individual wilderness survival and fitness, they are significantly inferior to chimpanzees and lions. However, this does not mean that human survival without assistance is necessarily worse than that of chimpanzees and lions in any given environment. There are many examples of individual humans surviving in the wild. Can the size of individuals affect population size? Leticia Aviles, an evolutionary biologist at the University of British Columbia, posits that population size is constrained by the size principle, which is the ratio of surface area to volume. To maintain their energy requirements, organisms must extract energy from their body surface in a size-appropriate manner. As an organism expands, the diminishing surface area to volume ratio restricts further growth, which is how nature governs an organism's size. This explanation appears reasonable, but it raises another question: why are social animal groups consistently larger than average? As an example, Fair's leaf monkey can reach a group size of up to 320 individuals. Is this a singular instance influenced by atypical geography and adequate food resources? It does not appear so, although in general, group size for the same species will not differ by such a large order of magnitude. Nonetheless, differences are expected, and in some cases, these differences can still be relatively significant. Characterizing herd animals based on indicators such as average size would be inappropriate. Is there a relationship between population size and the leadership or management abilities of the leader? Does a leader with stronger and more advanced management skills correspond to a more significant population? This logic suggests that a larger population should exhibit greater civility or manage a highly complicated partnership before requiring management intervention. Intelligent communities like chimpanzees exhibit traits like obedience, betrayal, power struggles, and violence. In his book The Politics of Chimpanzees, zoologist Frans de Waal explains the power structure in chimpanzee groups. Individuals who cheat and fight for power, strategy, association, privilege, trade, arbitration, and collective leadership are not different from humans. The simple social structure, consciousness of hierarchy, limited free will, and differentiation of individual functions in the swarming society of insects may contribute to their division of labor and cooperation, possessing an unmatched tacit understanding, enabling them to overcome obstacles to expanding their swarm. How do human beings cope with highly complex social situations and resolve intricate social relationships within in-group civilizations, while balancing between positive and negative outcomes or promising and bleak outlook? Half human, half god, or half human, half beast? Throughout the history of biological evolution on Earth, all organisms have adhered to the laws of natural selection, which dictates the survival of the fittest in order to evade retribution from nature. Within the confines of natural law, the natural strategy for survival among organisms is evident, whether they are symbiotic or part of a ruthless food chain and intense competition. In the wild, the laws of nature do not show compassion by covering the weak with protective colors. Hunting and being hunted remain unaffected by cries for fairness, and moral denunciation doesn't shame selfishness. However, when examining the behavior of social creatures, there is another perspective to consider beyond the laws of nature, the human perspective, which has developed independently from other species. The humanistic perspective acts as a microscope with the ability for self-examination, carefully assessing and evaluating all that happens to mankind. It's like a divine ruler with a scale of honor and shame, measuring precisely the expanse and extent of human nature's magnificence and ugliness. The humanistic perspective highlights how human beings can exhibit godly or bestial behavior, often wandering and changing their ways. At times, individuals even merge with the broader human experience. The humanistic perspective initially reveals the good and evil tendencies that exist within human beings. According to Aesop's fables, the weak good was exiled to heaven by evil. Good subsequently sought Zeus's advice on how to return to earth. Zeus instructed good not to go together but separately to earth. He reasoned that since evil is often among people, it may easily approach them, whilst good coming down from heaven has to move slowly. The story narrates that people often find it challenging to come across good, while they frequently encounter evil and suffer from it. This ancient story, likely originating from the 6th century BC or earlier, reflects the profound puzzlement people felt about the stark difference in the prevalence of moral good and evil in human beings. At that time, when the living environment was challenging, this contrast may not have been unexpected. Today's highly civilized societies allow people to be free from the scarcity of material and spiritual resources, and people are no longer required to resort to evil thoughts or actions to ensure their biological survival. In reality, however, the opposite seems to be true. The increase in civilization's evolution has not led to reversing or improving the contrast between good and evil's occurrences. Good and evil appear to be two enigmatic parasites that can coexist and yet are mutually exclusive. They are inherent in human nature and still exist in a society's shadows. Although it's undeniable that there are two sides to human nature, finding a satisfactory definition of it remains a challenge. Despite decades of researching human nature with both a microscope and a divine ruler, we are still unable to fully comprehend its essence and the factors that determine its moral and ethical values. Humanist philosopher Erich Fromm has highlighted the dilemma that lies in assuming an entity as the essence of human nature. This approach forces us into a non-evolutionary and non-historical situation, suggesting that no fundamental changes have occurred since the beginning of human existence. Although it may be challenging to accept the idea that human nature is indefinable, it has some validity. Significant differences exist between early Homo sapiens and modern humans who have been at the forefront of civilization during recent centuries. Concepts like humane care, crimes against humanity, and capital punishment have undergone transformation. Chapter 1 suggests that even with the separation of two evolving human processes, there still seems to be no significant difference in the ultimate expression of human nature in society. Can the simultaneous existence of good and evil be attributed to human evolution? If it were an accidentally evolved harmful gene, nature would have eradicated humans from the planet. If we have to assert that it is a beneficial gene, it appears hypocritical and contrary to our volition. According to the Bible, God prohibited Adam and Eve from comprehending good and evil, and after they disobeyed by eating from the forbidden tree, Satan was given the authority to penalize humanity by associating evil actions with their lives. The tale exemplifies that the predominant human thought and conduct is to eliminate evil and foster good, and that coexisting qualities of good and evil may not be inherent to human nature. The German philosopher Nietzsche posited that man is an animal whose future is yet to be determined. The uncertainty cannot be regarded as a deficiency of human nature. Is it possible to suggest that some individuals are born uncertain, or that not all individuals' lives follow predetermined rules? Is it possible that the creation of human beings by nature is incomplete until individuals and societies accomplish the other half during their evolution? While striving for personal and individual certainty, humans introduce significant uncertainty to society while obtaining minimal certitude. This logic leads to another challenging issue: which one of us is imprecise? What is inevitable in human nature? This question is difficult to answer because it may be considered discriminatory. It may be true that humans are neither inherently good nor evil, selfless nor selfish, warlike nor friendly, preloaded with evil nor inherently good. These characteristics are not inherent to human nature, but rather potential tendencies. Human nature may be described as a shapeless fluid or gas, molded by the container that contains it and influenced purely by the environment. Is this accurate? In the 1960s and 1970s, Chinese Communist Party Chairman Mao attempted to bring about a massive human transformation in China, but the effort ultimately failed. Despite the distortions inflicted upon human nature, it will eventually regain its original form. This example suggests that good and evil in human nature are not purely spontaneous, nor completely fluid or rigid, and cannot be totally distorted or transformed by those in power. The manifestation of good and evil in human society must also be subject to laws similar to those of natural selection. If not, human society will keep repeating tragedies and disasters. Apart from battlefield mutilations, human civilization has experienced multiple waves of genocide, terrorist attacks, mass atrocities, and other extreme events during its evolution. The sufferings resulting from these acts are an unforgettable mark on humanity, and the list of wrongdoings is endless. The destructive power of evil surpasses the therapeutic power of good, leading to the prevalence of evil over good in Aesop's fables. Nonetheless, there is no evidence to justify this inequality. The interplay between good and evil in human society necessitates both success and failure, with equal chances of either outcome. For centuries, theorists across disciplines such as philosophy, psychology, and anthropology have debated the moral standing of nature as either good or evil, yet a conclusive answer remains elusive. Biology has not identified any evolutionary or molecular clues regarding the existence of a fundamental evil or a fundamental good. It is scientifically and logically untenable to separate human nature from the categories of animality and sociality, and to generalize human nature based solely on sociality. The sociability of human nature, as a gregarious or social animal, seems to encompass a part of the animality of human beings. Is it possible, then, that the sociability of human beings is more pronounced than their animality? While humans are not the only social animals, they are the most social creatures compared to ones like ants and bees. Additionally, among animals that live together harmoniously, humans are at the top of the list when compared to African lion prides or orcas. Other primates who are closely related to humans have also developed complex rules and rituals, as they too are highly social creatures. It is not uncommon for these herd animals to engage in warfare between different communities. At times, it can be as violent and brutal as it is in humans, with the manifestation of fundamental evil or fundamental good under different conditions. When we shift to the perspective of the human perception of good and bad consequences, we can see the issue. Typically, our perception system is not very sensitive to positive consequences because they tend to evolve slowly and gradually. In contrast, the development of negative consequences is sudden and somewhat harmful as soon as it arises. This sudden transformation significantly impacts the human perception system, creating an image of evil consequences replete with violence, cruelty, coldness, and darkness. This perception also affects the life instinct and psychology, causing severe anxiety. Thus, the disparity in human perception of good and evil can lead to the disregard of the fact that many evils masquerade as good and wreak havoc, rendering our minds oblivious to the harm caused by such evil. This harm is felt so strongly and irritatingly in the end. In Shirley Jackson's American novel, The Lottery, evil is intertwined with the villagers' daily existence, and it is also ritualistic. It becomes a senseless, indiscernible doctrine that blurs the line between good and evil. In order to uphold this absurd tradition, the villagers display such indifference to life that they permit unclean hands, such as Mr. Summers, to commit evil deeds under the guise of good intentions every year. Throughout history and in modern society, individuals have used their values and belief systems to rationalize evil actions and to conceal their true motivations by cloaking them in a veneer of holiness. Nationalistic sentiments, religious beliefs, concepts of sovereignty, and views on justice all have the potential to serve as justifications. Unfortunately, evil can easily deceive by adopting the veneer of these values and beliefs, obscuring its true nature. Consequently, conflicts between good and evil can quickly transform into battles between competing belief systems, making it challenging to discern which side represents the morally correct position. Evil has a destructive impact on one's innate connections, cognitions, and behavioral patterns, leading to a dangerous sense of pride. This, in turn, leads to heinous consequences. Religious jihads have been fought from the Middle Ages to the present day, with each side seeking to represent justice and holiness. However, historical evidence proves that nearly all of these wars have been evil. Terrorists do not acknowledge the wrongness of their actions and carry out their purportedly religious missions without regard for their own lives. They also show no mercy or respect for the lives of innocent individuals whom they plan to kill. Despite openly terrorizing and murdering people, they believe their actions rid the world of evil and save others. The violence used by terrorist organizations is extremely brutal and bloody, but they have not been able to eradicate it because the evil in them is protected by far-fetched explanations of justification and sheltered by totalitarian masters. Even if the serious consequences of evil impact on society at large, and a societal crisis emerges, evil will not sit back and wait for death, but will look for a scapegoat to divert attention from it. This scapegoat will be chosen as a sacrifice to carry the public's blame for their suffering. In many cases, good is easily deceived by evil because good is often wrapped up in ignorance, vanity, and moral narcissism. In Greek mythology, Oedipus served as a scapegoat to alleviate the disaster at Thebes by gouging out his own eyes and exiling himself. He unwittingly committed patricide and married his own mother. Despite being unjustly accused, he felt remorse for his past ignorance, which had led to the tragic fate predicted by the oracle. The true source of evil evaded the efforts of the righteous, as bystanders kept silent. Could the distorted perception instilled in herd animals inevitably allow for the triumph of malevolence? No, that is not the case. Despite the constant conflict between good and evil, nature's majesty and ruthlessness inevitably force evil to submit. In the end, goodness always wins in any grand conflict, otherwise nature would compel humanity to side with Satan. By nature, humans engage in both good and evil, are always striving for good, and perpetually triumphing over evil. Evil often causes paralysis in human society. Humans are consistently overcoming evil. Throughout the history of human civilization, there has been a continuous cycle of domination and resistance against evil. Byproducts of group living. The perpetual conflict between good and evil has influenced human civilization, resulting in magnificent achievements in architecture, art, literature, science, technology, and a wide array of industrial products that add knowledge and enchanting attraction to our planet. The human achievements, as well as their inner psychological conflicts, attitudes, and interpersonal relationships, are all related to the byproducts derived from the duality of human nature, good and evil. These byproducts are undoubtedly closely related to our sociable nature and appear in pairs as irreconcilable counterparts. The list of these counterparts includes but is not limited to nobility and lowliness, loyalty and betrayal, sincerity and hypocrisy, contentment and greed, envy and admiration, competition and cooperation, conformity and ego, authority and anti-authority. Scholars in sociological, psychological, biological, and evolutionary studies have conducted extensive and detailed research on the roles of these byproducts and the mechanisms behind their production. Scholars are uncertain why complex and contradictory socialized psychologies, forms, and structures emerge, much like our helplessness at the intersection of good and evil. Additionally, answering the following questions poses a challenge. What makes defining the contradictory byproducts precisely challenging? What causes them to be both rational and irrational? Why has human wisdom been incapable of resolving such contradictions? Social hierarchical descriptions of populations and ethnic groups in terms of superior and inferior statuses have a long history, probably dating back to the beginning of city-states, and serve as a way of subgrouping. Hierarchies have been present in human societies for thousands of years and seem to continue existing in the present day. All men are created equal is a basic human right recognized by people in most countries, since it was written into the Constitution of the United States of America in 1787. Even now, the idea of a hierarchy is often associated with discriminatory rhetoric. Any individual who speaks about hierarchies with even the slightest carelessness is often met with angry voices of denunciation. Is it possible for human society to eradicate hierarchy completely through constitutions and verbal or written criticism? Can human society rid itself completely of any form of hierarchy? Although few regions in the world still uphold descent-based hierarchies, hereditary aristocracy no longer exists. No one is inherently superior or inferior, and the social structure associated with roles and identities is based on a division of labor rather than hierarchy. Moreover, there is no difference in status between people based on ancestry, color, gender, creed, occupation, wealth, or power. As the idea of equality for all and against injustice has become a beacon of human morality, it implies that genuine equality is within reach, and humans can remove all hierarchical differences. Does true equality even exist? Dividing things and people into classes and groups is less explicit and rigid than in previous hierarchies, and may not appear hierarchical in a strict sense. In essence and origin, there is no apparent distinction between the two. During the early stages of human evolution, the primary driving force for creating hierarchy was the social division of labor. Various factors such as blood, wealth, war, migration, and religious division played a role in creating hierarchy. During the formation of large-scale human group living, the initial purpose of hierarchy may have been to divide the way and scope of connection to facilitate it, rather than to establish opposites. The separation of individuals into groups is an inherent characteristic of society that cannot be eliminated at the psychological, conscious, or value levels. For instance, usually, professors don't prefer to socialize with street vendors. Entrepreneurs avoid associating with alcoholic playboys, artists steer clear of hypocritical politicians, and hikers shun wild racers. Other unacceptable groups similar to those in the above examples exist. There is undoubtedly some movement and overlap between groups due to the variability and diversity of personal interests. Most human societies tend to form various hierarchical groups independently. Groups based on interests are relatively more adaptable and compatible, whereas groups founded on values tend to be more stable and permanent. The latter refers to a contemporary notion of rank that is rooted in human consciousness and cannot be entirely eradicated. Next, we will discuss the human tendency towards contentment and greed that is influenced by the abundance of living conditions. Few herd animals besides humans exhibit such characteristics. As a general rule, human civilization despises poverty and prefers abundance. Nevertheless, people's perception of poverty and wealth can vary significantly both between individuals and within the same person's lifetime. Greed is present in the life of every individual in all human societies. In this context, greed is not insatiable or unscrupulous, but rather the constant pursuit of satisfying one's curiosity and establishing more fulfilling social relationships. This type of greed is exemplified in the following scenarios. After being satiated, we start to look forward to better quality food. Once we are comfortable with our surroundings, we begin to explore new places. Living without concerns spurs our desire for luxury and high standards, while already having extravagant belongings urges us to strive for additional admirers and elevated social status. Life is like a winding-up machine. One must keep on swimming in the sea of desires. Why does human nature dictate constant desire and insatiable appetite? There may be some truth to viewing greed as an evolutionary impulse. For the most part, people will not settle for their current living conditions. They relentlessly pursue a higher quality of life and do not lose their curiosity about the unknown despite civilization's accomplishments. The influence of greed on advancing human agriculture and industrial civilization should not be understated. In the context of modern human civilization, there has been a general increase in the accumulation of material possessions, knowledge, and wealth over time. Even the massive wars and widespread plagues that occurred during development did not impact this trend in any way. Nevertheless, greed plays a significant role in the following scenarios. Human desire for food has driven advancements in production, processing, and storage technologies, leading to a more varied and stable food supply. Human desire for shelter and travel has driven advancements in construction and transportation technologies, expanding the scope of human activity beyond spatial boundaries. Human longing for knowledge and social connections has led to innovation and progress in communication and internet technologies, providing people with a new sense of security and satisfaction in the information age. Is greed an effective cure for anxiety? This argument appears to excuse greed, but it is flawed because if greed were innate in human genes, individuals would not experience the emotions of loneliness and guilt that often come with excessive greed. Furthermore, greed grapples with the same issues of uncontrollable desire and precise regulation. Failing to control our desires properly, or allowing them to become uncontrollable, can lead us into the pit of total depravity, leaving us with no understanding of what purpose greed serves. From ancient times, values and religions worldwide have deemed greed a hazardous trait and the root of all evil. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10 in the New Testament states that the love of money is the root of all evil. Those who have a craving for money have departed from the truth and inflicted pain and distress on themselves. Descriptions of Buddhist sins attribute greed as the first source of evil among the three poisons that include hatred and ignorance. Religions encourage the eradication of greed through mindfulness and spirituality, and advise their adherents to detach themselves from worldly pleasures. However, these efforts seem to be ineffective because only a small percentage of people are capable of isolating themselves from worldly society completely. People who live in a community, including those who think they don't have a desire for possessions or sexual activities, and even monks or Buddhists who claim success in their cultivation, are still likely to desire authority and status. Although greed cannot be eliminated, contentment has become a useful mindset for people to manage the anxiety caused by it. Despite that, this mindset closely resembles self-deception, and as such it's not stable or long-lasting. Even when facing great temptation, people cannot control their greed and its various negative consequences. Thus, is it appropriate to abandon this mindset? The third topic concerns human sincerity and hypocrisy. Unlike deception, hypocrisy has a purpose that opposes the biological purpose of survival. As a common social characteristic, it only occurs within a population or society. In the usual sense, hypocrisy means inconsistency, duplicity, or giving compliments when one doesn't mean them. The more complex the society, the more widespread and severe the hypocrisy, with the most notable manifestation within human societies when compared to other primate populations. Sincerity and hypocrisy, as byproducts, often exist in a gray area between good and evil, and are intertwined with each other. Consequently, it is challenging to describe sincerity and hypocrisy solely in terms of good and evil, and it's also difficult to completely eliminate either trait from an individual. It's impossible for anyone to live in society without being honest and sincere. However, well-intentioned hypocrisy might slip in. Hypocrisy is a trait that people can learn as they mature and become more accustomed to it without the need for any formal education. During childhood, people are typically innocent, and while they may use simple disguises in emergencies, sincerity is usually their default mode of behavior. In contrast, hypocrisy isn't a strategy for emergencies nor self-deception, but appears as a method to build stronger social relationships. Observing people who are finely dressed and wearing branded items, it's common to compare oneself with them, and potentially use hypocrisy to elevate one's standing by pretending not to be poor to avoid exclusion or being viewed as inferior. Individuals in need who receive charity may refuse to accept it hypocritically to maintain their reputation, even when it is not enough to meet their basic needs. In social situations, people might adjust their posture and the language they use to avoid direct conflict and maintain a positive atmosphere, even when interacting with an annoying person. These examples of social behavior are used as a last resort to avoid negatively impacting existing social relationships or avoid developing a closer connection with someone. When hypocrisy serves a selfish purpose, it can be considered immoral. Using a benevolent and moral demeanor as a cover for immoral intentions is a deceitful tactic. Some individuals may be quick to criticize others to silence them in the name of double-standard goodness, while they themselves do not actually do good. Those who engage in hypocrisy may also condone evil under the pretense of doing good and thus become accomplices to evil. The trend of political correctness that has emerged in mainstream Western society could be seen as a form of hypocrisy due to its increasing pervasiveness. Political correctness may disregard the fact that individuals have their own strengths and weaknesses, and fail to find viable solutions to address the root causes of underprivileged status. Instead, it often involves making hypocritical gestures in rhetoric and policy. This action opposes freedom of speech to achieve linguistic equality, yet it does not alter the actual situation or people's personal value judgments. To be precise, political correctness does not combat evil, but rather appears to tolerate it. Sincerity and hypocrisy can be at odds with each other, in both intentions and results. Excessive sincerity can appear impersonal, even offensive, and accidentally cause harm despite good intentions. Daily lives are dotted with hypocrisies underpinned by good intentions, like comforting the sick, praising friends and loved ones, applauding colleagues, or forgiving shortcomings. Though most of those good deeds and words are hypocritical, they tend to yield positive outcomes. Many individuals persist in performing and expressing these acts, while also being mindful of preserving a system that identifies itself as a civilized society. The paradoxical byproducts of subordination and ego are contradictory. On one hand, individuals regard themselves as having free will and emphasizing self-reliance, advocating equality for all. On the other hand, they are involuntarily subservient to the crowd, and in extreme cases they even turn into mobs, acting as spokespeople and enforcers of wickedness. The ultimate theme is authority and anti-authority. Even the most logical and scientifically minded scientists are not impervious to human inconsistencies and manipulation of authority. Before gaining fame, some individuals espoused anti-authority ideas and emphasized the importance of questioning. However, after gaining fame, these individuals distorted their anti-authority views and became the driving force in suppressing challengers who disagreed with their opinions. Several contradictory byproducts of group living, inherent in human nature, cause people to oscillate between morality and immorality, irrespective of the societal code of conduct. Throughout history, the resolution of these problems has remained elusive due to a significant knowledge gap. In fact, the lack of resolution around these issues might be the reasoning behind Isaac Newton, a celebrated scientific icon, directing most of his efforts toward studying theology in his sunset years.